Welcome to episode 106 of Trek Live. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about divisive episodes or polarizing episodes. First, how you doing this morning, Mel? And second, describe the topic a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm doing really well. I'm coming off a little bit of a head cold that I've been battling for about a week.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think Dan is too. So forgive us if we're a little stuffy, a little coffee. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. This is yet another sort of topic that has come up a lot, I think, kind of accidentally as part of other conversations. Divisive episodes, polarizing episodes that, like if you walk into a room of Trekkies and, ask, hey, what do you think of this episode? You're going to get a wide range of opinions. What sorts of episodes are they? What are examples that we find that we're, maybe on an island with episodes that we really like that maybe others don't, and vice versa. So just pretty much anything goes. Really, you can talk about just about anything with this kind of a topic.
I'm
excited to talk about it, and we put it out on Twitter earlier in the week, and there's been a decent amount of feedback, different examples from people of episodes kind of spanning the whole universe of Trek, where people feel like they're either in the minority or they're divisive examples.
Yeah, that's kind of the beauty of this topic, is because there's going to be a lot of episodes named, but there's also going to be a lot of variety.
I think
for what you kind of consider divisive or
that's
polarizing too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's the biggest key. I think different people are going to define in their own minds like what's polarizing and what's not. So in somebody's experience, they may find that they're in a minority opinion about a given episode, but somebody else might agree with you, and that may create a perception of, maybe you're not so much in the minority. Maybe it's not quite as uncommon an opinion as one might think. So didn't do a whole lot of like setting rules. There's no scientific evidence to support episodes that may be named here. So somebody may take issue with, is this one actually divisive or not? And that's cool. That's fine. This can be defined any number of ways, and probably would be defined differently by different people. So I think it. Yeah, good.
I forgot what I was going to say, but you guys know the deal. With Trek Live, it's really open-ended. Tangents are welcome. So yeah, Bill said it. There's no kind of set in stone. We're just kind of going with how the conversation flows. So.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's how we like it here. We don't want to be super planned out and scripted. We want to see how our conversation just kind of naturally flows and what episodes come to mind. And if other people come in here and they contribute, who knows where it'll go. So before we get into that, though, what do you...
We do have some structure here. Yeah.
Yes.
I watched Errant of Mercy. I feel like I'm on this one episode a week thing right now. I don't know what it is. I'm going to try to get... I think it's just because we're getting down to the end of season 1, and there is some pretty heavy hitters coming up, so I want to take it week by week. I watched Errant of Mercy. If you guys don't remember, I think that's the first time we see Klingons. And all that entails. So,
Yeah, that's the first Klingon episode in production order. I think it's really good, actually. I think there's some really cool stuff with the Organians in that. I think Kor is a really good character, really menacing, very capable of going toe-to-toe with Kirk. I like the Klingons in that episode. They're conniving, they're brutal, they're not like... I love Klingons from across the universe, the whole thing. But they're not mindless brutes. They're not just coming in there and kicking the door in and blowing you away with pure strength and just kind of beating you up. Like these guys are calculating and very smart and tacticians, and I love that portrayal of the Klingons, and particularly that character Kor, I think, is a really strong example.
Yeah, and they do feel very menacing in early TOS.
Yeah.
Like I feel like later on they get a little bit maybe softened up a little bit, but you
Yeah.
really don't want to see the Klingon or a Klingon bird of
No.
prey decloak in front of your ship.
Uh-huh.
That's one thing that I got from watching this episode. It was, which was cool to see. So.
Yeah, I think they really set the tone well when they show up at the planet at Organia, and they come barging in the doors of the governing body, the council, and they're laying down the law and saying this is the way it's going to be, and it's extremely fascistic, like hardcore.
But that's
law or else. Yeah.
But it's almost set up with a sense of urgency from Kirk to try to get them out before that they come, So.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, Kirk. The dialogue on the Enterprise before they get to Organia and meet the Klingons definitely sets the tone for these guys are bad news, and if they like you said show up in front of your ship or in orbit of your planet and you don't have help to feed them off, and they're gonna come down, and it's not gonna be pretty.
Nope.
So it's they really do a good job of setting that tone that these guys are not to be effed with, and I think it's a really strong episode from early TOS.
Bill, have you been watching any TNG lately?
I did. I watched the last 2 episodes of season 2, Peak Performance and Shades of Grey, which is two polar opposites. Peak Performance is really, really good. Like I said in the little mini review I did on Twitter, I think the reputation the episode has is it's kind of just like lighthearted, kind of fun war games, but there's some real depth to it too. I think the way that it tests Riker's command capabilities and Data's like sort of self-confidence and his ability to accept that it's possible to make no mistakes and still lose. I think that's a valuable lesson. There's really good stuff for the characters in that. Picard's tested in his own way. He's part of the war game too, and he has to be on his toes and has to be on the top of his game to get out of this situation. But I think the spotlight on Riker and Data is it offers more depth than maybe the episode typically would get credit for. Kohlrami is obviously a really cool guest character. A lot of people responded on Twitter to the review saying that he's like a real highlight. I picked Frakes as the MVP. I love him as Riker in the episode, but quite a few people were like, the actor who played Kohlrami would have been their pick. So some really cool feedback on Twitter about that episode, and I think it's a really underrated gem from especially the first couple of seasons of TNG. And then Shades of Grey obviously is a clip show. It's it's not a whole lot to say there. It's one of my least favorites for sure. Thank goodness that it's the one example of Star Trek clip show that you'll find in the 700 plus hours of stuff. It's really unfortunate that it's a clip show as a season finale too. I think that's definitely, especially with hindsight of like the full franchise, all the shows. That's certainly about as let down of a season finale as you're going to find. Not just a one-off episode, but a clip show.
But are you excited to get back into TNG proper, kind of post season 3 or season 2? Sorry.
Definitely. Definitely excited to get into season 3. I am going to try to move with a little bit more urgency with season 3. I'd love to be into the real nitty gritty of TNG as Picard's getting ready to launch in January. So I'm hoping to do some damage and blow through a good chunk of it over the next few weeks. So we'll see how that goes. This is a busy time of year with the movie side of things for me, with a lot of stuff coming out. I spend a lot of time in a movie theater around this time of year. But I am hoping to knock out a good bit of TNG before January 23rd. Nice. I think it is. Hard. Yeah. You're coming up on the end of season 1 of TOS. You got like 3 episodes left. So
we're both kind of wrapping up seasons and then moving into season 2 and then and beyond. So.
And a couple episodes, real quick before we get into the topic, I'm curious. Like, when was the last time you watched The City on the Edge of Forever? Like,
I watched it.
For this, at some point.
Yeah, it was a Track After Dark. We watched it. I'm pretty sure, right? Didn't we?
Maybe. Yeah, I think we might have at some point along
That was
the
the
way.
last time. So it's been pretty. It's been fairly recent, but I don't
Okay.
care. It could be. I could watch it 15 minutes again after I just watched it. There's
There you go. Nice.
no time that I can just keep watching it on repeat because I truly love that episode. So it's not going to be
Sure.
an issue for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I was just curious if it's something that it's like first time in a long time kind of thing or more recent. So
No, I think it was pretty recent. So probably months, I think. So, but yeah. That being said, I think we should just jump right into the topic.
cool. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'll throw it to you first. I'm curious, like when you think of like divisive episodes of Star Trek in your experience, reading Twitter, being a part of this whole thing, are there episodes that immediately sort of come to mind for you as very differing opinions?
Yes,
really dominant.
The first episode that came to mind was, and it wasn't, well, it's technically an episode. It's a longer episode. It's a 2-hour episode. Mm-hmm. It's Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yes.
I think, to me, because it came to mind first. It is a divisive episode. I think there are some people who like it. There are some people who absolutely despise it. There are some people in the middle. So there's definitely some polarizing things. There's different camps of each kind of level of likeness, so to speak. But it also, when I watched it, I remember it being divisive when it first came out. People talking about how it sucked. And now it's kind of come back to maybe on that warmer side a little bit. That could be just me. That's kind of my. When it first came out, I wasn't too hot on it. I was kind of on the fence on kind of how I felt, just because there are some things that I have issues with it. But that's
Sure.
every episode. So that was the first one that came to mind. Thoughts on Star Trek Into Darkness?
Yeah,
Is
to
it
be
even
honest with you,
polarizing?
it's very polarizing. It's definitely, it fits the bill as far as if we were at a convention and you walked into a room full of people and said, hey, what does everybody think of Star Trek Into Darkness? Star Trek Into Darkness is probably the one that would most likely lead to maybe a TOS style, barroom fisticuffs breaking out. Like people have extremely strong opposite feelings on this movie. Mm-hmm. There are certainly people who I think are forgiving of it and are fans of it. But there are really strong, passionate non-fans out there, the critics of it. So it certainly fits the bill. I kind of fall more in the middle. I was certainly more forgiving of it early on, when it was new. Like typical for me, I found every reason to love it when it was brand new. As time has gone on, I don't dislike it. I think it's actually pretty good. It certainly has flaws, like you said, particularly in the third act. I think there are issues so with choices that they made. But I find value in it. I don't think, every once in a while, maybe a few times a year, you'll get, whether it's from me or somebody else, posting like a list of ranking the Star Trek movies. There are, whenever that happens, there are a lot of 13 Star Trek Into Darkness submissions from people who are not like anti Kelvin Timeline, anti New Star Trek people. People who are very on board with other things from this era of New Trek. You would kind of expect that from people who are more skeptical and have bigger issues with newer Star Trek, but it's not just those folks that place that movie there. But I don't agree with that. I would never put it. I don't think it's worse than The Final Frontier or Nemesis. It's certainly to me a better movie than them. But it's an interesting one to have conversations about. It is one that I'd be interested to, potential for a fight aside, a bar fight. I would love to go to a convention and hear other people's opinions and like well-reasoned, thought out, takes on Into Darkness, because the opinions are so, widely varied.
Yep.
Great example.
Yeah. What about you? What was kind of the first thing that kind of came to mind for you? as far as divisiveness or polarizing episodes / movies in the Star Trek universe?
Yeah, I mean, again, it really depends on how you sort of define it. But Course Oblivion from Voyager is certainly one that came to mind for me.
Yeah.
It's one of those that I think you'll find it on as many top 10 lists as bottom 10 lists.
Yeah.
If you poll people on favorite and least favorite episodes of Voyager, it'll appear on both of those lists. It's one that I think the premise, the fact that it's a follow up to an episode that is maybe less polarizing and more more widely panned, I would say, really puts it in a unique box as a sequel to an episode that people don't typically find strong. And it's one of the few examples of, there are a handful like this that you end up not really even spending any real time with our set of characters, and it's got twists in it and that are unusual. It's a unique animal in Star Trek for sure, and its uniqueness lends itself to a variety of opinions. And we've talked about this episode on this show a couple of times. Ad nauseam. It's come up a lot, and that's why I think it comes to mind so quickly for me, because it comes up a lot over the course of regular conversations. But I know you're not a big fan of it.
Not a big fan.
No, not at all.
Before we rattle off a few more episodes, I kind of want to highlight just a little bit, I don't know, take a little shortcut onto something that kind of came to mind.
Sure.
At first, when I was thinking about this topic, maybe morphing into a different topic, people on Twitter, and we will kind of go through the Twitter and mention what people mentioned.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of people were quoting Tuvix as a very polarizing episode.
Yes.
And to me, my mind went, the decision that Janeway made might be more polarizing and divisive. So that kind of led me on to, okay, what kind of command choices were made by other people, or things that happened in the episode are more polarizing than the actual quality or how good the episode is. Is that more polarizing, or the topic at hand?
The quality of the episode.
So, when we talk about New Eden, are we talking about, Bill and I usually differ on some things in that episode, but are we talking about, is the command decision by, is
it's
that...
an interesting...
Yeah.
And maybe... interesting...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, it's an interesting kind of difference. There are these episodes that got mentioned, like Tuvix, like Dear Doctor, that I think the divisiveness... I think the people who are anti those episodes genuinely dislike the episode, but the reason for disliking the episodes are not so much based in, like, production stuff, performance doesn't work, don't like the story necessarily. It's like the decision that was made in the episode sort of corrupts the whole thing. They're different animals to me than something like Into Darkness or Course Oblivion, which are divisive for reasons that aren't like choices necessarily made by the characters, but more broadly, I don't respond to the episode or the movie for more basic, broad reasons than the specific. This character made a decision that I just can't. I can't level with, and that takes me out of it, and that makes me not accept the whole of the episode.
Okay, gotcha.
But they are divisive. I mean, those are episodes that I guarantee you, if we were in a room full of Trekkies, But my thing is inspired debate, and Tuvix would too.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is that it's quoted as a good episode, but there is divisive aspects of it that spark conversation, which I guess is kind of the whole point. But yeah, that's
definitely.
Yeah.
But they were both mentioned a few times in the Twitter. We kind of alluded to. We're going to maybe read some of these Twitter submissions, but they were pretty common themes. Those two episodes, I think, are pretty typical.
Yeah. Another episode for me that seems to be a little bit polarizing is Author from
Yeah,
Voyager. There are some
definitely.
people who like it and love it. There are some people who are not as hot on it. As am I not as hot on it, but you know, that's okay. Another episode that I saw in other get mentioned in other uh, like discussions and stuff was Author. It always gets brought up. Along with I'm just sticking with Voyager. Um, the series finale
Sure,
maybe could be uh,
it is. I
a
think it is.
divisive episode as well. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I agree with both of those. I think author for sure. I always had the impression before Star Trek Twitter sort of became a thing, kind of going back and aging myself a little bit. Um, when that episode was new, and just with the limited sort of internet um, consumption that I had with like Star Trek stuff, it felt more universally positive, closer to when the episode was,
Yeah.
produced and aired. But as time has gone on, and Twitter and social media have given easier access to a wider range of opinions, it's
Mm-hmm.
become obvious that there's a big divide for that episode. I think um, there are quite a few notable friends of the show, people who are very prominent on Twitter, who really dislike that episode
Yeah.
for good reason. And there's valid points of view, I think, on both sides, and I think that's a fun episode to talk about because it always engenders, uh, strong opinions, and
Yeah.
I think there's validity on both sides
Yeah.
that people can articulate, and it leads to some fun and interesting debates about how the episode works and why it might or might not
Mm-hmm.
be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing too, not I feel like we maybe should have not put this as episodes or movies, but there is divisiveness in series and in shows.
Oh sure. Oh
So,
yeah.
and maybe that's something we can kind of, talk about here. But I think especially
Yeah.
New Trek. I don't want to lump everything into Discovery because that is really kind of a hot topic right now. But I do remember when the Kelvin timeline came out, there was some divisiveness too. That
Oh yeah.
you know, it's a mistake to do this time. This just don't with Spock and everything, and
Yep.
the original crew. We don't want to do that. We want something new.
Yep.
So there was definitely. I don't want to lump everything in Discovery. I know we talk about Discovery a lot, but there's also
Sure.
was some divisiveness, and still is, kind of about the Kelvin timeline. So that's kind of something I noticed
Yeah,
as well.
I think you could even go back further, and pretty much anything after Deep Space Nine. I think Voyager, there's a degree of divisiveness. There are people who have been not fans of Voyager going back 25 years now,
Yeah.
and have continued to be, not fans of that show. Enterprise is certainly divisive.
Yes. Yes.
It was extraordinarily divisive at the time, and is still, but both Voyager and Enterprise, I think, less so because of the glare of things like the Kelvin timeline and Discovery being such hot topics and more current. They're certainly super divisive within the community now, which is a whole different, I think, animal.
Yeah,
like
I
those
think-
two
'cause-
things are so. I know we talked about Into Darkness, but
Yeah.
they kind of goes without saying that
Yeah.
those broad things, that the shows and the Kelvin timeline movie series are inherently divisive.
Yeah.
For sure.
Now that I think about it, though, I think that Star Trek in itself is inherently divisive. Because if I remember watching the documentary about TNG,
Chaos on the Bridge.
yeah, Chaos on the Bridge, it was divisive even then. And then going forward, post TNG, it was, again, you're right, it's divisive about Voyager and even Deep Space Nine at the time. So I think
Yes.
every new Star Trek is going to have a certain level of divisiveness. I think when someone cares about something a lot, there's just going to be divisiveness. And I think that this universe is so big. And I guess that's the beauty of the Star Trek, universe is that there is
Sure.
something for everyone, and there is plenty of a number of episodes out there that again that is divisive. So I think with this large of body of sample size that you could pick from, I think there is always going to be
a range of opinions,
of divisiveness and opinions.
Sure.
So
that's 100% true. Deep Space Nine and The Next Generation, even The Next Generation was extremely divisive. I wasn't around for it, but read any firsthand accounts of the origins of that show and the rollout of the show and people's response to the first season and the first handful of episodes. And there was a lot of pushback. Hey, this isn't Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Yeah, it's not the original crew.
Yeah. The idea of expanding the universe to, feature different characters was not something that everybody was on board with.
No.
From the outset, and it's sort of a defining trait of Star Trek now. It's what they've been doing for
forever.
30 plus years.
Yeah.
At this point, so we kind of all take it for granted now, but that was a radical idea that not everybody was on board with, and some people it took years to get behind it, and come around to like The Next Generation and then other things that came later. So you're right. I think Star Trek all along has been divisive, and like you said, it's a big fan community. The larger the franchise gets, and the more tastings, different flavors that you kind of put into the pot.
Yeah.
You're gonna get more.
You're gonna get a preference.
People are gonna have different preferences for kinds of flavors that you could get, and push back on others. So it's sort of goes with the territory. I think when you build something this large and that spans this much time.
Yeah. Let's do some Twitter stuff. Some Twitter. I saw that there was a little bit kind of talk about Spectre of the Gun. Some TOS love there. Let's see.
Spectre of the Gun was mentioned.
Yeah.
Definitely not an episode that would have immediately come to mind for me.
Same here.
But this is where it comes into play, where it depends on your perspective. If through your life you've had debates with people about an episode, it's in your mind it's divisive now. I love it.
Yeah.
I've come across people who really don't.
Yeah.
So in that person's opinion, I think it was Carl Wonders. He found that episode brings about some divided opinions. He's a fan of it. And it is. I mean, it's certainly it's an oddball episode, Western with minimalist sets.
Yeah.
I personally really like it. I think the minimalist sets are kind of an asset to it. It makes it more kind of creepy and alien, and what the heck is going on? The characters are acknowledging that they're minimalist. That it's like an incomplete vision of this past. Like it's like pulled out of somebody's head, but not completed.
Yeah.
It's a half. Incomplete rendering of the Old West.
Yeah.
I think that's an asset for the episode, and I'm sure there are people who find it too, campy, cartoony, and just can't get past the production values. I'm sure that's the case.
The Nerd Trek podcast mentions The Final Frontier. I know.
Yeah,
that could be mentioned for sure.
Yeah, that's one that I think, the opinions tend to be more in the negative camp. I think that there's a clear favoring of the negative opinion. It's more common to find somebody who's anti-Star Trek V than pro, but people who are pro that are fans of that movie are typically kind of adamant about it. It's another one that you're going to get fun conversations about if you bring it up in a good group of people.
Yeah.
Trekkie Rob, our good friend, frequent guest, mentioned Insurrection, which is another. That's definitely one that.
Yes.
Yep. There's a lot of mixed opinions on that. I think time has been kind to it in the fan community. I think it's more common to find people who are for it now than maybe were there in 1998 when the movie came out.
Yeah.
There's someone here that he's a fan of Favorite Son from Voyager, Fairhaven and Spirit Folk. I think all three of those examples are again sort of like Star Trek V, where there are a lot of negative opinions, but people who like them,
Yeah,
are going to stand out as hey, I kind of like this.
I think Rascals was mentioned as well.
Rascals is one that always, every time I do my rewatch and I put a poll out, that's one that is a clear divisive example, where you get a real wide range of responses, everything from A's to F's. You'll get for that one.
Move Along Home.
That's another one that I think is typically negative, but
again,
if you like it, you're going to stand out.
Yeah. Shabbos Curtain.
Yeah, that's divisive. That's definitely a divisive one, I think.
Sub Rosa, definitely.
Yeah.
Lessons. That's again, I think could stem to another topic. Divisiveness between characters and who he should be with.
Right. I think that's an interesting example of the thing that's divisive about it is the relationship. Should he be with her or her kind of thing?
Is it the topic or the thing inside? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I think it tends to be less. The harsh opinions on either side tend to be less. People tend to talk about the episode less and the relationship more.
Yes.
In my experience, people say I'm Team Darren, I'm Team Vash, I'm Team Beverly, whatever you are, and that sort of drives, do I like the episode or not? Does it thumbs up, thumbs down?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of all kind of comes down to where you fall on that. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, less than the meat of the episode.
Yeah. Again, Trekkie Rob's quoting some Voyager, Fairhaven, and Spirit Folk. Kind of. Those episodes, Again, definitely polarizing for sure.
Adam, who's been a guest on not a guest, but he's been here many, many times as a viewer and contributor, mentioned a certain episode that takes place in sickbay in the nighttime hours.
Oh, no.
Yes. Is definitely divisive.
Definitely.
That's another one that I think is a very clear example of you'll get a very wide range of opinions. Very passionate supporters, very adamant critics.
Mm-hmm.
It's not mentioned anywhere, but one I'll throw out there is another one that I always find very, very mixed opinions is the motion picture. I think very, very. I think within the community, it feels like maybe in my experience, there's more love for it now than maybe there was years ago.
Yeah.
But it's another one that you'll find it at the very, very top of movie rankings and at the very, very bottom as well.
Yeah,
it can fall kind of anywhere. You take 100 of those things, those Star Trek movie rankings, and it's probably going to fall somewhere in the middle not because it's placed 6th or 7th in the majority of them. It's going to be just kind of averaging out from everything from 1, 2, 3 to 11, 12, 13 placements.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the motion picture is a definite example of something that's pretty divisive.
Yeah. Anything else? Before we maybe start wrapping it up.
There are episodes that I like. An example of an episode that I think maybe I'm less huge on than a lot of other people is like Shore Leave from TOS. That's one that I feel like, especially in my younger years, was like a fan favorite that I don't love. I don't dislike it. I'm not sitting here saying it's a bottom 5, bottom 10 example of TOS by any means, but it's certainly not a favorite. But I get the impression that it is for some, so that might be another example of somewhat divisive episode. But divisive, like you said, it covers the gambit. I mean, we're sitting here kind of naming episodes, movies.
Yeah.
You mentioned you could talk about series being divisive and why they're divisive. You could talk about characters being divisive. We've kind of done that. We just did an episode on Pulaski. She's certainly divisive as a character. Cass is a divisive character. Neelix is a divisive character.
Yeah.
There are lots of examples of
divisiveness and polarizing.
Inspire.
Not
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I can mention, but I
Don
think
Paris, real quick. I want to forget him. He mentioned, which is a lot of the TNG movies. I think Generations, Insurrection, even
yeah.
Nemesis, they all have degrees of divisiveness. I think Generations is another really good example of that. Yeah, you walk into a room, you're going to get a wide array of opinions. There's a lot of
Yeah.
real detractors, and there's people who have real nostalgic reasons for loving that movie too. That
Yeah.
I kind of identify with myself. I don't. It's not one of my favorite Star Trek movies, but I have a lot of reasons to like it that kind of go beyond,
Yeah.
the qualities of the movie itself, which is another thing that kind of drives these kinds of things. Like, do you have a nostalgic connection to an episode or a movie that maybe puts you on the other side of the popular opinion?
Yeah. Another thing that I'll mention, and maybe this can kind of transition into kind of another thing I want to talk about, is
Sure.
Season 1 of Discovery, just because it was so recent, and I just remember a lot of divisiveness
Sure.
with it,
Yeah.
because it was very different. But I feel like I tended to keep myself on the positive end and talk to the people who are the positive end, which is good and bad. And I think that as fans of Trek, I would encourage you to get on my little little rant about being a good fan. But there is a certain level of divisiveness that can become a little bit too ugly, and I think we should have civilized conversations moving forward. I don't want to, promote discussions that turn into, arguments and stuff like that.
Sure.
I think we should all be reasonable and just remember that at the end of the day, we all love Star Trek, and it expands our views when we talk to people who aren't so hot on another episode that maybe I'm kind of hot on. It kind of, helps us see both sides. So
Yeah.
when it comes to divisiveness, just remember,
Keep the temperature cool.
keep the temperature cooled, and just
Yeah.
have a fun, challenging conversation. Because I've seen conversations kind of get out of hand when talking about stuff like this. Not recently, but in the past, and I don't want to start a forest fire, dumpster fire in the Twitterverse. So
Sure.
that being said,
And
yeah, I wanted to get.
I
that
think,
out there.
yeah, the joy in it is to hear. For me, I like to hear what people think, and the minute the temperature gets raised to the point where you're kind of just, getting overly passionate about it and turns into an argument, you stop hearing the other person. It just becomes about, talking over and trying to defeat the other person's opinion. And one of the reasons I love Star Trek so much is because there is so much of it, and the opinions do range so wildly, and many people have, well reasoned and interesting opinions about these things. So that's what keeps me on Star Trek Twitter, is to hear that kind of stuff. I want to hear, like, when I just did it when I finished season 2, I put out a request for top 5 lists for season 2 of TNG, and I love when somebody submits a list with the outrageous Okana or the Child, and Loud as a Whisper, like more unusual choices that you don't find. To me, that's great. And when I used to do it for other seasons, and I would really push for it and ask for things, I would track, like, statistically, and I would find that there were seasons of Star Trek that I would get these top 5 lists, and of the 26 episodes, like 24 of them would be named on a top 5 list, and over like 70 or 80 or 90 top 5 lists. So it just goes to show that, there's no completely right answer. There
is no right answer.
There are no right answers.
Yeah.
They're all perfectly valid
right?
opinions, and
they're all right.
Yeah, and the fun is,
yeah. So I know I'm like a competitive person, and if you're in an argument, you want to try to win it. No, it's just just share your opinion. That's what I feel like. That's what this community has been built on, is to share your opinion, and to hear other opinions, like Bill said. So yeah, all right.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah, let's start. Let's wrap it up. Do you have any Star Trek content that you'd like to mention?
That's a good question. Let's see.
I do.
You first. Yep.
There's again. I feel like I mention him every other week, but I'm just really hot on him right now, and he's putting out great content. E.C. Henry, he did a size comparison to the Reliant with the Reliant rather, and the Enterprise. Again, great breakdown, analytics, and all the great information. So E.C. Henry on YouTube, wealth of knowledge, not just on Star Trek, but on sci-fi, Star Wars, everything. Please,
Sure.
you will not be disappointed. Great breakdown of size comparisons, and it hits me right at home because I love ships, anything ships. So that being ships that we fly on, and also relationships.
You love them both.
Yeah.
You do.
So, go check him out. He's mostly on the ships that fly in space side of things. So, but yeah.
I will. I haven't seen that yet,
Yep.
but I do love his. I love his stuff. I'll shout out Trek Ranks Abstract Threes, which is a really deep cut topic that I would have never even thought of. But it does. The minute you think of it, and you start like rattling through like images in Star Trek and stuff. There are plenty of examples of just weird sets of three of within Star Trek, and I've mentioned them before. Making It So interview the big names they interview, people who work behind the scenes and are typically found on the end credits and not the main credit sequence, the title sequence. Phyllis Strong was a writer on Enterprise and on the 7th season of Voyager. They interviewed her. Really cool insights into what it's like in the writer's room and how you get into the writer's room, how you get a job like that, and what the sort of day-to-day grind of it is like, and building blocks of some of the episodes that she worked on. And yeah, I love that show. I like hearing from those kinds of people, and yeah, definitely recommend it. Making It So is the name of the podcast.
All right, that's been episode 106. We had a great time. Talking about divisiveness. I guess kind of is more of maybe the better thing, not just episodes and movies, but more general stuff that's divisiveness in Trek. So,
what makes it divisive?
Yeah, and what makes it divisive?
Like, what is divisive?
Yeah. Stay tuned. We'll probably be back next week for another fun topic of live discussion about Star Trek. You guys know the drill. You guys drive the discussion. So come over to Twitter, the Facebook page, or jump into the Discord. That's a great community to get into, to be able to talk directly to us, not just on Twitter, but and we have monthly, bi-monthly Trek After Darks is a perk of the Discord server. So definitely, I couldn't recommend it more to come over to the Discord server. So.
Yeah, if you're not on the Discord server and you're interested in joining the discussion, shoot me a DM on Twitter, TrekFan4387. My DMs are on. Anybody can send me a message and just tell me you're interested in joining the Trek Live Discord server, and I'll let you right in. And definitely recommend it.
All right, that's been 106. Like I said, thanks for watching.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.